What if I told you you're bending space right now without machines, without magic, without even moving an inch? Sounds like clickbait until you realize Einstein's impossible claim is literally sitting under your feet. Because the moment you exist, the universe has to negotiate with you. Not emotionally, geometrically. Think about how your brain pictures space. An invisible, rigid box, empty, passive, a silent stage where things happen. That picture feels so natural, you never question it. And that's exactly the trap. Einstein's first move was to treat that stage like an actor. Space doesn't just hold you. It responds to you. Here's the unsettling part. You don't need a planet to do it. You don't need a black hole. You don't even need to do anything. Just having mass JV energy means you are not merely inside space. You are rewriting its shape. Every atom in you is a vote in how reality is arranged. But why would space be bendable at all? Why isn't it hard and fixed like a grid? Because light refuses to play by your common sense. Light doesn't care how fast you chase it. It won't add your speed on top of its own. That single stubborn fact forces the universe into a weird compromise. If light must stay constant, then something else has to give. And what gives is the very fabric you thought was untouchable: space and time themselves. So when you feel gravity, you're not feeling a mysterious pull reaching through emptiness. You're feeling the consequence of geometry being altered around you. You're being guided along the most natural path in a space that is no longer flat. And once you see that, a terrifying question appears. If space can curve around you, then what you call straight, still, and even right now, might be negotiable too. Before we go any further, pause for a second, because this idea only works if your brain actively wrestles with it. If space can bend just because you exist, then understanding this isn't passive entertainment. It's a shift in how you see reality itself. And that only happens if you stay mentally present. If this already challenged the way you think about gravity, space, or your own existence, let me know in the comments. Even something simple like space isn't empty, or I didn't expect this, helps lock the idea in your mind. Hitting the like button isn't just support for the channel, it tells the algorithm that deep, uncomfortable ideas like this are worth spreading. And if you don't want to miss what comes next, subscribe, because the next part pushes this even further. Now that you're primed, we're ready to break an even deeper assumption, one that makes bending space feel not just possible, but inevitable. Here's the mistake your intuition keeps making, and it's so deeply wired that even knowing it's wrong doesn't make it disappear. You imagine space as a container, a box, something that exists first, and then things are placed inside it. Objects move through space. Events happen in space, and space itself just watches, silent, neutral. Dead. Einstein's insight was to quietly remove that assumption, and the entire structure collapses. Because the moment space is just a container, gravity has to be a force, something pulling across distance, a mysterious influence reaching out from mass to grab other mass. That story feels comfortable because it matches your everyday experience. But comfort is not truth. And Einstein noticed something disturbing. If gravity were just a force, it wouldn't play nicely with the rules that light was already enforcing on the universe. So he flipped the logic. Instead of asking, what force is pulling objects, he asked, what if objects aren't being pulled at all? Picture this. You're walking on what feels like a straight path. You're convinced you're not turning. But from above, that path curves gently around a hill. From your perspective, nothing unusual happens. From a wider view, everything changes. The motion didn't lie, interpretation did. That's what space does when mass is present. It stops being a flat background and becomes a shape. And objects don't fight that shape, they follow it. What you call falling is just motion along the straightest possible path in a space that is no longer straight. Here's the reorientation that hurts a little. Straight lines depend on geometry, and geometry depends on space. Change space, and you redefine what straight even means. So when Earth or the Sun bends space, it's not bending objects directly. It's rewriting the rules those objects obey. And suddenly, gravity isn't something happening to you. It's something happening around you. Constantly. Quietly. Even now. But this raises a dangerous question if space itself can change shape. How would you even notice? And more unsettling, how many things do you believe are natural forces that are really just geometry tricking your senses? Now comes the part that feels like the universe cheating because it violates one of your deepest assumptions, that straight lines are objective, that straight exists independently of who's moving, who's watching, or where you are. Einstein showed that this belief doesn't survive contact with light. Imagine two people watching the same beam of light. One stands still. The other moves in your intuition. At least one of them must be wrong about what they see. But nature refuses that answer. Both measurements are correct. The universe doesn't pick a favorite observer. Instead, it does something far stranger. It reshapes space and time differently for each person, so the speed of light never changes. That compromise has a terrifying side effect. Events that look simultaneous, straight, obvious to one observer become skewed and misaligned to another. Not because of illusion, because simultaneity itself isn't universal. Now, layer gravity on top of that. Light doesn't just travel in straight lines anymore. It bends. Not because it has weight in the usual sense, but because it's following the geometry of space. When massive objects curve space, light obediently traces that curve. And if light bends, then straight becomes a local idea, not a cosmic rule. Here's the twist. Your brain resists. If light defines how we measure space and time, and light itself bends, then the tools you use to define reality are being warped by reality itself. You're trying to map a curved world with rulers that curve along with it. This is why astronomers see stars in positions they're not actually in, why lenses made of gravity can magnify entire galaxies, why the universe quietly edits what you think you're seeing before the image ever reaches your eyes. And suddenly, bending space isn't poetic language. It's the only way the universe can stay consistent. But if even light can't escape this geometric trap, what chance does your sense of now have? Because the moment space bends, time can't stay untouched. And that's where things stop being merely strange and start becoming personal. Here's where the illusion finally cracks, because up to now, you could still pretend this is all abstract. Distant stars, extreme physics, exotic situations. But Einstein's most uncomfortable move was showing that the bending of space forces, a fracture in something you use every second. Now, picture two people watching two flashes of light, one on the left, one on the right. To someone standing in the middle, the flashes happen at the same time. Simple, obvious. Case closed. But now imagine someone moving past that scene. For them, one flash happens before the other. Not because of delay, not because of error, because the structure of space and time refuses to agree. There is no hidden referee declaring which observer is right. Both are. And that single fact destroys the idea of a universal present. Once space can bend and observers can move differently through it, now fractures into countless versions, each tied to a path through space. The present, you feel so vividly, isn't floating out there in the universe. It's stitched together by your motion, your gravity, your position. This is where Einstein's universe starts feeling less like a movie and more like a frozen sculpture. Past, present, and future aren't marching forward, they're all embedded in a four-dimensional structure. What you experience as flow is not the universe changing. It's you moving through it. That idea isn't poetic. It's a direct consequence of how space bends and how light behaves. And it means something deeply unsettling. The future already has coordinates, just like the past, not as destiny, but as geometry. So when gravity slows time near massive objects, it's not time running late. It's different paths through space-time, slicing the universe in different ways. And if your present is just one slice among infinitely many, the question becomes impossible to ignore. What part of reality is actually doing the flowing time, or you achi this point? Gravity has stopped feeling like a force and started feeling like a conspiracy between space and time. But Einstein went one step further, and this is where reality becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Because once space and time fuse into a single fabric, mass doesn't just bend space, it bends time itself. You've heard the phrase, time runs slower near massive objects. That sentence sounds harmless, almost boring, but it hides something radical. It doesn't mean clocks malfunction. It means different paths through the universe accumulate different amounts of time. Two identical clocks can meet again and disagree forever about how much existence has passed. This isn't theory. It's measured. Satellites in orbit experience time faster than clocks on Earth. GPS only works because engineers correct for Einstein's predictions. Without relativity, your phone would drift kilometers every day. The impossible quietly runs your life. Now connect this back to bending space. If mais curves space and slows time, then gravity is not a pull-down, but it's a tilt in the direction of time itself. Objects fall because the future is closer in one direction than another. You're not being dragged. You're sliding toward where time allows motion most easily. That's the reframe that hurts your intuition. Gravity isn't telling you where to go. It's reshaping what forward means. And here's the disturbing implication. If time can stretch, compress, and skew depending on mass and motion, then the universe does not share a single tempo. Reality doesn't tick. It fractures into overlapping rhythms, each locally consistent, globally incompatible, which means your personal experience of duration-long days, short moments. The feeling that time accelerates as you age is not some poetic illusion layered on top of a solid background. It's happening inside a structure that never promised uniformity. But if gravity can bias the future itself, then one last question becomes unavoidable. Are you moving through time freely? Or are you following a path already carved by space-time's geometry? If space-time can guide your motion and bias your future, then it isn't just reacting, it's storing information. This is where the idea of space as something alive stops sounding metaphorical and starts sounding literal. Because a curved fabric doesn't instantly forget what bent it. It carries memory. Think about gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself, not in matter, not in energy fields, layered on top of space, in space and time as the medium. When massive objects collide black holes, neutron stars, the universe doesn't just rearrange matter, and those shutters travel across the cosmos, stretching and squeezing reality as they pass through Earth. You are being gently distorted by events that happened billions of years ago. Let that sink in. Space is not empty. It's elastic. It vibrates. It remembers. And if space can ripple, then distance itself becomes unstable. 2 points are not separated by a fixed amount out there. Separation depends on the shape of space-time between them. That's why shortcuts are even conceivable. Why wormholes aren't fantasy by definition. Why expansion can make galaxies flee faster than light without breaking any rules. Because it's space itself that's growing. This is where your intuition completely collapses. You think of motion as objects moving through space, but on cosmic scales, space moves through itself. Carries galaxies along like ink in flowing water. The universe doesn't need engines. Geometry does the work. Now, bring this back to you. Your mass is tiny on a cosmic scale, but it's not zero, which means your presence leaves a microscopic fingerprint in space-time. Infinitesimal, yes, but real. The universe must account for you, even if no one else ever noticed. And here's the emotional twist. If space-time keeps track of everything that ever bent it, then the universe is not indifferent. Not in a human sense, but in a structural one. Nothing happens nowhere. Nothing leaves no trace. So when you move, when you exist, when time passes for your reality, subtly rearranges itself to accommodate that fact. And that leads to the final disturbance. If space and time respond to everything, then what you call objective reality might be less like a stage and more like a conversation. By now, the idea that space is a passive backdrop should feel impossible to defend. If space-time bends, ripples, stretches, remembers, and responds, then reality is not something that simply is. It's something that continuously adjusts, and that forces a final, deeply unsettling confrontation. What role do you actually play in this structure? Einstein resisted the idea that reality depends on observation. He wanted a universe that exists independently of anyone looking at it. And yet, his own equations quietly undermine the naive version of that hope, because space-time does not exist in general. It exists locally, defined by mass, motion, and energy, defined by context. That means there is no single godlike perspective where everything lines up neatly. No universal clock, no privileged frame. Every description of reality is anchored to a position inside it, including yours. This doesn't mean reality is imaginary. It means it's relational. What happens? When it happens. And even what straight or simultaneous means depends on how you are embedded in space-time. You don't create reality, but you participate in how it unfolds. And here's the cognitive shock most people miss. If space-time geometry determines motion, and motion determines experience, then your lived reality is shaped by structures you never consciously perceive. You feel solid ground. You feel time flowing. You feel stable now. But those feelings are interfaces, not raw truth. The universe you navigate daily is a simplified rendering your brain constructs so you can survive inside a far stranger machine. A machine where the past still exists, the future already has coordinates, and the present is a moving cut through a four-dimensional hole. So when you ask, am I bending space right now? The honest answer is more disturbing than inspiring. Yes. But not as an act of power, as a consequence of existing at all. And if existence itself reshapes reality even slightly, then the line between observer and universe isn't as clean as you were taught to believe. The real question isn't whether space bends. If you made it all the way here, you're already doing something most people never do. You let your intuition get shattered and kept listening anyway. And that matters because ideas like Einstein's don't just entertain you, they quietly rewrite the way you see time, space, gravity, and your own place inside reality. So here's what I'd love you to do. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next mind-bending breakdown that's already waiting for you. Leave a like if this made you question what now even means, because that tiny click tells the algorithm this kind of deep conceptual science is worth pushing to more curious minds. And comment one phrase, so I know you really followed the chain of ideas. Comment, I am bending space. If you want to go even deeper, add what hit you hardest. Was it nitrogen monoxide universal now? Or the idea that gravity is geometry, not a force?